Charles Ponzi made $15 million in 9 weeks. He was arrested before the market crashed. Nobody connected the dots. The story we tell about the Great Depression starts with October 1929. The stock market collapsed. Fortunes vanished overnight. Millions blamed greed, leverage, and the reckless behavior of Wall Street itself. It's a clean narrative, a sudden break, a moment when the system failed. But that version omits a crucial warning. 8 years earlier, in Boston, a man named Charles Ponzi had already built and destroyed a financial empire using a single mechanism. His collapse wasn't a market correction. It was a controlled demolition of investor trust. And what he proved, what nobody wanted to see, was that the system itself was fragile. Charles Ponzi arrived in the United States in 1903 with $50. He was 21, Italian, fluent in 5 languages. He worked odd jobs, dishwasher, laborer, clerk. Nothing stuck. By 1920, he was living in Boston, broke, and desperate to prove himself. That January, Ponzi noticed something. International postal reply coupons, small certificates used to prepay return postage, were cheaper in Italy than in the United States. The spread was narrow but real. Buy low abroad, sell high at home. A perfect arbitrage. Ponzi saw infinity in that gap. He called his company the Securities Exchange Company. The pitch was simple. Invest $1 today. Receive 150% in postal reply coupons within 90 days. Guaranteed. The math was impossible, but it didn't matter. Boston wanted to believe. Investors lined up around the block. Widows, shopkeepers, postal workers. They brought their life savings. Ponzi paid them returns on schedule, real checks, real money. The early investors made genuine profits. Word spread. By summer 1920, he was taking in $15,000 a day. The mechanics of what Ponzi was actually doing never mattered to investors. He wasn't buying postal coupons. He was taking money from new investors and paying it to old ones. A chain, a closed loop. As long as new money kept arriving, he could sustain the fiction. He made $9 million in 9 weeks. Then, in August 1920, a Boston Post reporter named Richard Grozier asked a simple question. Where were the postal coupons? Ponzi couldn't produce them. The Securities Exchange Company had never actually bought a single coupon. The story collapsed in 48 hours. Investors rushed to withdraw. The scheme evaporated. Ponzi was arrested, tried, convicted, but here's what the history books miss. He served only a few years before deportation. He returned to Italy. He was alive in 1929 when the market crashed. He was alive when the Great Depression spread across America. And he watched people blame sudden collapse, not the architecture of trust itself. The conventional story says 1929 was unique. A black swan, an unexpected rupture. But Ponzi had already demonstrated something darker. The system didn't need a stock market to fail. It only needed investors to stop believing. Throughout the 1920s, while Ponzi was in prison, a similar structure was building across America. Not in one scheme, but in dozens. Margin buying, stock pools, insider trading. Each one operated on a principle Ponzi had already proved. New money sustains the illusion. Stop the flow, and the pyramid inverts instantly. Regulators knew about Ponzi. They knew his scheme had collapsed, but they treated it as an isolated fraud, not a blueprint. They didn't ask what made it possible. They didn't examine whether the same conditions existed elsewhere. They didn't rebuild the walls. By 1928, the stock market was operating on the same principle Ponzi had used. Retail investors bought on margin, putting down 10% and borrowing 90%. As long as prices rose, the system worked. New buyers kept entering. The pyramid climbed. Nobody asked what happened when the flow stopped. October 1929 arrived. Prices faltered. Margin calls came. Investors who had bought on credit suddenly owed more than their shares were worth. They sold. Others panicked and sold. The new money stopped arriving. The pyramid inverted. Millions lost everything. The mechanism was identical to Ponzi's. only the scale was different. The Great Depression wasn't a sudden failure of the market. It was the inevitable conclusion of a system that had been operating on Ponzi's principle for years. The difference was scale, not structure. The difference was that regulators had seen Ponzi's scheme work and fail. They chose to do nothing. Charles Ponzi died in Rio de Janeiro in 1949, poor and forgotten. He never became wealthy. He never lived in luxury. He was, by all accounts, a man of modest ambitions who discovered that people wanted to believe in impossibility. He gave them permission. The market did the same, just slower and with better lawyers. The lesson wasn't learned, not in 1929, not in 2008, not today. Every financial crisis since has followed the same pattern Ponzi sketched in 1920, a mechanism that requires constant new money, a belief system that collapses when the flow stops. Regulators see it, they document it, they do nothing, the system resets, the next fraud begins. Ponzi's real legacy isn't his name attached to schemes. It's that he proved something the financial world has never wanted to admit. The system doesn't fail because of one bad actor. It fails because it's designed to fail. And every time we pretend otherwise, we're just waiting for the next collapse. Subscribe, we document the patterns regulators ignore.